Hello everybody, my name is Brady and I'm a 19th century American historian and we are back with another React video. Today we're going to be continuing the extra history series on Sengoku Jidai, which has been a lot of fun so far, but before we get started, I do want to give a shout out to the newest channel member. Thank you to AppZon for becoming a channel member, and if any of you want to become a channel member, you can do so by clicking the link in the description box below. Now, let's get it started. So the title already kind of has me. Warrior Monks of Hongan-ji and Hiei. I don't know if I pronounced those other two things right, but I understand warrior monks, and that sounds fascinating. I'm so ignorant to Eastern history that everything in this series has felt fresh and new to me, which makes it more exciting. It almost feels like I'm following a fantasy series, because a lot of the fantasy series that I do check out take place in kind of Eastern-inspired worlds. So once I come back down to Earth, it hits me again. It's like, not only is this like a cool fantasy story, it's not even fantasy. This is very, very real. So I'm very excited to continue with this. So let's get it started.
Remember how last time we left off with Oda Nobunaga seizing Kyoto and installing Ashikaga Yoshiaki as shogun? Well, you see, there turned out to be one small problem with that. Yoshiaki actually thought he was going to get to be shogun. Nobunaga, on the other hand, was pretty sure that if anybody was going to be ruling Japan, it was going to be Nobunaga.
So I was curious about what direction they could go with this. If he was going to have like a proxy shogun, or if Nobunaga was just going to step in himself. He seems like he's very conscious of how the surrounding lands perceive him, so he's trying to make sure that he has some sort of a moral high ground when he goes into these situations, which is very clever, but it makes me wonder if he's going to be willing to keep that middleman in between, which I think is the most fascinating part of this so far.
So with this in mind, trouble started after a scant few months in Kyoto. Nobunaga made Yoshiaki send letters to all the surrounding daimyo, inviting them to take dinner with him. Unfortunately, Yoshiaki had already started to send out secret letters of his own to nearby clans, inviting them to come liberate Kyoto from the hands of the wicked usurper Nobunaga. So you can see how this dinner invitation might seem suspicious to some people. And the head of the Asakura, one of the powerful nearby clans, saw through this offer of an evening snack from Yoshiaki, realizing that Nobunaga was behind the whole thing, and decided it was a trap. Of course, because the invitation had technically been from Yoshiaki and not Nobunaga, when the Asakura refused, Nobunaga declared them traitors to the shogun, and declared war on them.
This is what it is. Like he finds a way to have the moral high ground and then attacks. He manufactures the moral high ground, which I think is really clever. He's becoming more brazen. I don't know if he was like that from the beginning and it's just showing more, but I think his power seems to be finally settling in his head. He's starting to realize how much influence he could have if he really is able to exercise his force. And you know what? When you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. I think that's the figure of speech. So he has all this power. He wants to use it. So, okay, this is really interesting so far.
A bit much over a dinner party, but hey. And so it was on. Nobunaga marches his forces out of Kyoto to crush the rebellious Asakura. But to get to the Asakura lands, he has to march through Azai territory. If you're Nobunaga, you're thinking, of course, no problem. After all, if you remember from our last episode, Nobunaga's sister was married to the Lord of Azai. Womp womp.
Okay.
So yeah, of course, as soon as Nobunaga and Tokugawa's forces have gotten to Asakura territory, the Azai decide that, what the heck, they've known the Asakura for longer, now is a good time to revolt. So now, Oda's forces are trapped between two powerful clans. The Azai have cut off their retreat to the rear, and the Asakura are in front of them.
Okay, so they oh, jeez, he was really betting on that. He made a bad bet. I predicted early on that this guy's not going to make it and that it was going to be the other guy whose name I'm forgetting, but I'll know when he mentions him. That was going to be like the big face here. I don't think this guy's going to make it. And seeing how I mean, most of these, like, ambitious imperial leaders, like, a lot of them just don't make it. I don't know as much in Eastern history, but there's a lot of examples in Western history. I guess there's a lot of Western history that do make it as well, so I guess I can't say that completely, but whatever. Let's keep going.
The supply lines are in ruins, they're outnumbered. So what'd they do? Well, Nobunaga's first response was to fight everybody, but luckily his generals convinced him that they could split the army and safely slip away by the back roads. And here you've got to give Nobunaga credit. One of the reasons that he succeeded where so many others failed was that he was always playing to win. He was willing to take a desperate gamble if it was the only chance he had, but he wasn't a man who acted rashly or out of temper. But oh man, let me tell you, he was pissed.
I bet.
But he was gonna kill his brother-in-law. No, literally, he was really going to kill his brother-in-law. But it gets worse.
Oh, I believe him.
The Oda column is sneaking through forest back roads, Nobunaga cursing loudly about the treacherous Azai, when suddenly there's a noise from one of the trees. A ninja, Sugitani Zenjubo, has been lying in wait.
Dude, we finally have ninjas. I'm so excited. Like, ninjas feel like so not real to me, so I'm very excited about this part.
For them. He fires his first shot from an arquebus, tosses it aside, and fires a second shot from another arquebus he had primed and ready. Both hit home. Nobunaga is thrown from his horse.
Oh shoot, is he already dying?
Sugitani Zenjubo flees, but his job wasn't done. Nobunaga stands up, both bullets having lodged themselves in his armor. And
I didn't think he'd die that
Nobunaga
early.
Was mad before? Oh boy. So, with an assassination attempt behind him, Nobunaga makes it back to Kyoto, and over the next 2 months, he rallies his forces. Now, with Tokugawa and Hideyoshi at his side, it's time for him to return to Azai and teach them what it means to betray Oda Nobunaga. It is now July of 1570. The combined Tokugawa and Oda forces have marched into Azai land. They move to threaten one of the main Azai castles, but they're met at the Anegawa River by the combined armies of the Azai and the Asakura.
So, geographically, this is very interesting. The Oda and the Tokugawa, the fact that they, okay, this is interesting. Both of them touch the Azai border, so I'd imagine the Azai are actually quite vulnerable in this. The fact that the entire Azai territory is separating the Asakura. Sorry, it's hard getting all these names straight. Separating the Asakura from the Oda and the Tokugawa is going to make both attacking the Oda and the Tokugawa very difficult. And like, it makes me wonder, do they even want to do that? Because honestly, I don't know what the mindset of those leaders are, if they are ready to really step in and start taking over everything or not. And if the Asakura were to try to take over the Oda or the Tokugawa, they would be governing from a distance because they have all this Azai land in between. So if they really wanted to control everything, you would think that the Azai would have to go first. So I just don't know exactly what they want.
The Azai line up on the east to face the Tokugawa forces, and the Asakura line up on the west to face the Oda. The stage is set for an epic... Wait, no, hold on. Nobunaga wants to switch it up first. The night before the battle, when he sees the Azai flags to the east, he switches his whole line around so his army is facing the Azai, while Tokugawa's handles the Asakura. Because nobody kills Nobunaga's brother-in-law except Oda Nobunaga. So now, in the dim twilight hours of the morning, the battle begins, with samurai struggling in the knee-deep water of the Anegawa, steel ringing on steel, waters running red. Nobunaga's forces are barely able to hold their own, pushed back inch by the fury of the Azai assault. Enemy samurai almost reach Oda Nobunaga himself, only to be cut down at the last minute before they can deal the killing blow. But Ieyasu's forces are faring much better, and just as it looks as though the Oda forces might collapse, the Tokugawa push back
and they're going to encircle them.
Ieyasu detaches a division to slam into the Azai flank. The Azai start to disintegrate. Nobunaga is saved, and the day is won. But the Oda forces are in too ragged a shape to pursue, and so they withdraw to Kyoto. Seeing the desperate shape the Oda troops are in, another clan, the Miyoshi, the clan that Nobunaga initially kicked out of Kyoto, decided it was time to get theirs back, and aligned themselves with the Iko-iki, warrior monks who held the nearby temple fortress of Ichiyama Hongan-ji.
Okay, this is getting more complicated because now we're introducing more. Like, these guys are quite distinguishable. So, like, I'm not going to mix these guys up with other people. I'm just probably going to call them the warrior monk guys. But Okay, this is a little easier than remembering a lot of those other names because like their designs are often just like virtually the same thing, just different colors. This one's gonna be a little bit easier.
Now, have you noticed how everyone's coming at Nobunaga piecemeal? If the Azai, the Asakura, the Ikoiki, and the Miyoshi had all worked together, they could have crushed the Oda. But this is one of the key characteristics of the age. This whole period is a catalog of people living in a state of mutual distrust. This is why the Oda-Tokugawa alliance is so important. Having just one ally that he could consistently count on gave Oda Nobunaga an enormous advantage, and allowed him to mop up the rest of the clans one by one. Which brings us back to the Miyoshi and the Ikoiki. The Miyoshi are sort of a...
Like, they do trust each other, but is that wise? Because honestly, I can see why there should be distrust between them as well. I am imagining this going like they somehow are able to gain some ground, but then one will eventually have to turn on the other.
A historical footnote, but the Ikoiki are something we've got to talk about. These guys were militant Buddhists, and when I say militant, I mean these guys were able to kick an entire samurai clan out of the Kaga
That's not what you
province
think
and
about
just
when you
take it
think
over for
Buddhist.
100 years. To
Typically.
put that in perspective, this was the only province in all of Japan not to be ruled by samurai at that time. These guys scared the heck out of Oda Nobunaga and Tokugawa Ieyasu. In fact, they were probably the biggest obstacle between Oda Nobunaga and unifying all of Japan. Luckily for Nobunaga and Ieyasu, these warrior monks were more of a loose coalition than a unified group, suffering from the same distrust and fragmentation that afflicted the rest of the country. Now, in this case, the warrior monks giving the Oda trouble were from the temple of Ishiyama Hongan-ji, a vast fortress complex at the mouth of the Yodo River. Nobunaga sallied out with 30,000 men to reduce the temple. He had to. You see, the thing about the Ikoiki was that they weren't a clan. They didn't follow the same rules of territory. A samurai clan had its domain, and if anybody entered it, well, that meant war. But the Ikoiki were monks, which meant that, sure, they had their province of Kaga, but they basically set up their temples wherever they pleased. After all, it's hard to stop your own peasants from building a nice, peaceful temple in your province. And this temple, Ishiyama Honganji, was just south of Kyoto, where Osaka is today. These monks had been refusing to pay taxes, disrupting trade, and generally just being a nuisance for some time. Nobunaga couldn't have them deep in his territory while he tried to conquer Japan, and now that they'd allied with his enemies, well, it was time for all-out war. So Nobunaga raced south, and his 30,000 men surrounded the temple. The order to attack was given. They tried to charge forward, but the marshy land around the temple dragged at them. They sunk into the tidal flats, weighed down by their heavy armor. Their feet, sucked down by the muddy ground, got trapped in pots that the monks had buried in the wet soil. Then, gun monks. Yes.
Gun monks. That's actually, that's one of the funniest concepts I've ever heard in my life. Gun monks. And the fact that...
3,000 elite monk arquebusiers came to ruin Nobunaga's day.
How does that happen? How do they exist?
Else who had tried to dislodge the monks of Ishiyama Honganji had learned. Ishiyama Honganji was impregnable. For 11 more years, Nobunaga's men would camp around Ishiyama Honganji, making it the longest siege in Japanese history. No castle defended by samurai, no daimyo's fortress ever held out as long as these peasant monks. But no sooner had Nobunaga's offensive against the Ishiyama Honganji stalled than he learned that the Azai and the Asakura were back in it, coming after him with the warrior monks of Inryakuji. You see what I mean about Buddhist monks actually being Nobunaga's strongest opposition? Well, Inryakuji was a fortified monastery on top of Mount Hiei. Wait, Mount Hiei? Come on, this one's practically in Kyoto. That's it. Nobunaga bites his pride and makes a truce with the Azai and the Asakura. It's time to deal with some monks.
Okay, so now he's able to just take on the monks, like, one-on-one here. Well, not one-on-one, because they're, like, not one thing. They're a bunch of things. But, okay, that makes a lot of sense. It makes me wonder, by the time we're done with this one, and this one's almost over, we're only, like, halfway through the series, so he's gonna have to kick off conflict probably with the Azai and the others again, just... imagining how human nature works, I'd imagine that conflict will pick up once he's able to stabilize a little bit more. I'm not sure how old he is at this point. They've emphasized the amount of time that has passed. So I'm not sure how well this is going to end up working and how long his alliance is going to end up being maintained.
Now, the story of Mount Hiei is actually a tragic one. Nobunaga's learned from his experience at Ishiyama Honganji. He wasn't going to try to assault one of these impregnable temples again. Instead, he sets his men to encircle the mountain, and then on his command, he had them light the tree line
Yeah,
ablaze.
fire!
As the fire roared up the mountain and started to consume the temple at its summit in Ryakuji, Oda Nobunaga gave the order to slaughter every man, woman, and child fleeing from the burning temple. 20,000 people died on that day, and all of Japan learned what kind of man Oda Nobunaga really is.
I'm not celebrating
In our
this,
next
I assure you.
episode,
I was
things get
mostly
grim
kidding.
for Tokugawa Ieyasu, and one of the most famous ninja in history enters our story.
That sounds exciting. I would love to learn a little bit more about ninjas. That's something that I've not heard all that much about. I feel like I've heard stories about them being like more like comprised of people of a slightly lower class than the samurai, but I don't know how true that is or even where I heard that. But that sounds very exciting. So we might get some assassinations or something cool like that. So very, very nice. We did not see what's his name, the younger dude who, like, I think we saw him, but like he didn't actually play a role really as much in this one. I mean, we heard little things happening with his people and whatever, but I'm kind of surprised that we didn't get as much of his story. But maybe there's just nothing to tell there. He just going along with the battle plans or whatever. I get it. But yeah, this was a cool one. So I've been talking to you guys about which extra history series I'm going to be doing next. So since this one is 6 episodes long, when we get to 5, I'm going to put out a poll to the members, and I'm almost positive I know which one they're going to end up picking, but I have 3 that I'm going to be putting up, and give them a fair chance to pick. But I think there's a certain Otto von Bismarck dude, whatever thing that's we're gonna have to end up doing. So yeah, that seems to be the popular one, but putting some others up there just to see what they would like. So we got a couple more episodes before we do that, though. I'm gonna try to crank the rest of these out pretty soon, though, so yeah, you're probably not going to be waiting all that long. So thank you guys for watching this video. That was cool. This is so cool, and I will see you guys next time. All right.